Hello everyone, Teresa here, and in this video I wanted to show you how I made all these little elements that I had put in my fall album. It was the jelly print album. I'll link how I made the tags, and then I'll also link when I put them together. So this took me a lot longer than I really thought it would, so I didn't want to bore you all with one very long video, so I kind of broke it up into several different videos. The first video shows it was a dual-sided tag album. That's where I did Halloween on one side and fall on the other, and that was using distress inks to create the tags with my jelly print or jelly plate. And then on the next video I showed how I put the Halloween side together. With that one I kind of included the embellishments and the putting it together. Then in the fall side, I added pictures to it, so I kind of broke it up and I just did one video showing how I put the whole album together, and then another, this video here is showing how I made these little stamped embellishments, just in case you're interested. I know when I was creating this, I was really looking for inspiration from other crafters. There's little creatures or critters that I colored in, and I was kind of looking at different coloring artists that use Copic markers or watercolor, just to get an idea of the colors. So that's kind of why I wanted to put this together for anyone that's interested. It'll show you how I mostly did watercolor for this. So I did stamping, obviously, and then watercolor paper for all of the watercolors that I did, the watercolor designs, and then a lot of layered stamping. In this I'm using the distress inks, and I used this technique on the Halloween side where I would stamp with one color. In this case it was the gray, and then on top of that I just lightly brushed on some of the black soot over it, and it kind of creates a little more dimension in the stamping. I also created this same thing like I did on the Halloween side, where I wanted to have something cohesive throughout the whole album or each of the pages. So in this case on the fall side I had a picture, like a little photograph that I had taken on almost all the pages except for one, and then I had included a word or some kind of sentiment, and then the little critters that I'm using, or you'll see I have some gnomes and mushrooms and things like that I color in. So that was kind of my theme for kind of completing this album. Doing an album or project like this it takes a lot of thought to put together. It's a lot more complicated than putting together a card for me, because I normally put together a card, it's a front and it's maybe an inside, and then it's done. This had so many pages to it that I really enjoyed it, but it did take me a little bit longer to really think through how I wanted to do all of the pages and make sure that they didn't feel like totally different pages that didn't go together. So I was kind of sticking with the same theme and the same coloring, and pretty much what I did here, you can't really see this, but in my other video that I was putting it together, actually in one of my videos that I did, I showed where I colored in mirrored stamping, and I'll link that video here. In the mirrored stamping one, there is a little mat that I use, and I took all of my distress oxide inks that I'm using in this, and I'll link those colors down below, and I just kind of swiped them all out and created myself a little palette. So as I was cutting and stamping out these images, I was pulling from that one kind of palette that I had created, and it kind of lasted for all the coloring that I did throughout this mini album. So this particular technique that I'm using here, you could see that the die cut is a solid piece, so I couldn't see what I was die cutting. So I had done this technique in another video where I just used a template and then I can cut it out perfectly. So I'm just gonna play some music and I'll pop back in when there's a few things that I want to point out. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about these leaves. These are some skeleton stamp leaves that I did, and I wanted to just kind of talk through what my thought process was in trying to color these in. They are detailed in that they have a lot of veins in them, but I also wanted to bring out lots of kind of fall colors in each of them. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my Oxide inks and doing varying colors, and then I spritzed it with my just water, and that kind of activates the distress inks, and it kind of makes them run together a little bit. And I liked how the colors looked together. I thought it looked really nice. I used some brown, some green, yellow, orange. I think Crackling Campfire was my reddish color. And then I did the same technique where I kind of used my wet paintbrush, just water, and I'm just kind of pull in the colors to spread them around. One thing I'll note about this technique, and I learned this as I was kind of doing this album, if you really want the colors to blend and spread like this, the key is to do it while the distress inks are still wet. So later on I'll kind of point out there's another image that I did that I let it dry. I stamped it out in the distress ink, I let it dry, and then I came in with water, and you'll see the ink does not reactivate, not as much. It's not as noticeable at all. So that's why I wanted to mention, if you like this technique where the ink kind of blends out, it's better, it has a better effect if you do it while the ink is still wet. Then I let that layer dry. So it's just that water over the images. I let it dry, and then I took some rusty Hinge and I put that over all of the stamps, and then I pressed that on top so they all kind of have a cohesive bit of a theme. I think I did do a little bit of brown in the acorns though, but all the leaves I did the rusty Hinge, and it just kind of made them look like they go together, and it also brought out a lot of those details. So I just wanted to mention that. And then for this little stamp here, I was I was having some interesting times getting my paper to not pull up every time I put the stamp down, so I was taping it down to my surface. I know they've got those little magnets, but this was such a small piece and I was trying to use up my scraps, so I was using tape to try to keep it down. And later on I have another technique that I used that I'll show you that I thought I liked even better. So I kind of like that about these projects is, you know, I come across a need for a solution and then I kind of figure it out as I go. Sometimes it's from watching other crafters that are really creative, and other times it's just from me realizing what I have access to and coming up with an idea. So in this case, I used the tape to hold down the paper, but there's another technique I used in it later on in the video, and I'll point that one out when I get there. Okay, so what's fall without a pumpkin spice latte or some kind of a fall coffee? So I had to do this little to-go cup coffee, and this is the one I was talking about where I stamped it with the Hickory Smoke. I let it dry and then I came back to it later to color it in, and I had to pull from my palette in order to get the color to actually show. So I just had done some water over the top of it, and it did not pull out the color from the edges much at all. Like, it wasn't even noticeable in real life. So this is why I had to bring in some color from my mat, my little palette over here, and that's how I built up the color for the whole little latte here. So as I was doing this corrugated cardboard piece for the latte, I had put too much water on my brush, so I just kind of dabbed them in, and then I was kind of spreading them around, those little blobs of water and color. And then you can see they dilute much more. Now I did not wait for the gray to dry when I did this, so you will see the brown kind of bleeding out into the gray latte area. Actually, I didn't mind it, partly because that's what watercolor does, and I really like that. I like it how it kind of bleeds together, one part to another, makes it look homemade. And then I also liked it because it kind of gave the feeling that maybe some of the coffee had spilled onto the cup, because that happens all the time. So I left it because it felt authentic, but I really had fun coloring this little cup, the little to-go pieces. And then in these circles, I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do with those, so I made them kind of look like, I don't know, I was going for like pumpkins, so I did orange, but they ended up just looking like orange circles. So I ended up at the end, you'll see I ended up putting like a little apple stamped cutout piece on top of it, so maybe it's like an apple spice latte or something. Okay, I just love this little gnome set from Inkadinkadoo, and it has like these little gnomes with mushrooms. I don't know if this is necessarily fall. It kind of gives spring vibes, but I decided to make it fall anyway. I like the little gnome had a plaid hat on the bottom there, so I ended up using this mushroom. It's two pieces of mushroom together, and then I liked the details in the mushrooms as well. And then I used the little three grouping of gnomes, and I'm gonna do, you can see my palette off to the side there, so I'm going to do the same technique here where I'm just going to color these in. I had a lot of fun coloring in these little gnomes. They were again, I actually used some Dollar Tree gnomes I had gotten as inspiration for coloring them in. One of the gnomes that I got from Dollar Tree had like a blue hat, a blue plaid hat, so I kind of used that for the middle guy, his hat. And then for the little girl one, I had a Dollar Tree gnome that had like almost like a minty green outfit and a yellow hat, and I really liked that combination with some browns and reds and oranges. And then for the last guy, I did some blue and some cream colors. So still trying to stick with the fall type coloring. And for the little wheelbarrow, it has flowers inside of it, and so I made those fall colored flowers. And I thought it was really cute. I thought these little guys were really fun to color in. I went on a trip recently and we were hiking through the woods and we saw so many mushrooms this time around. I'm sure I've seen them in the past, but they never really caught my eye like they did this time. So the mushrooms I saw, I actually found mushrooms that were red and had some had no spots on them, some were completely white. So I thought it was just so cool that, you know, these kind of mushrooms actually exist out there. So as I was doing this kind of fall theme, I don't know, I don't like mushrooms, I don't eat them, but I think that they are so cute for some reason. What do you think? Do you like mushrooms or no? So for this part, I wanted to show you how I made a few more gel prints as I was going. I wanted to use these gel prints in particular for the backing of some of my words that I was using, and mostly I was doing this copper color and this little florally leaf print. For this one I did just a pull of that copper color just by itself, and then I pulled this print that I have made out of the same color, so it's almost just like doubling up the same color, monotone, tone on tone. And I thought that looked really cool, just very shiny, and it looked really nice. I actually didn't end up using that one in my little album, so I'll probably use it for something else. Then I used these kind of two green colors, like a minty color and a green, and I was going to mix these with the copper leaf print as well. So first I pulled up this print from the greens, and then I would let that dry, and then after that this is dried, then I put the copper on it and kind of blended that out nice and thin. I didn't do a large amount of that copper. You can see right through it, and it's mostly just to pull up the print, and it adds just a little bit of shine in the background. I really liked this copper color. I used it quite a bit throughout this mini album. I used it in my embossing powder as well. I have kind of like a copper colored embossing powder, and then this copper that I used on these gel prints. So that was kind of a nice, I don't know, it felt more fall than the gold would feel, and it definitely was more fall than the silver. So I was liking the copper a lot this time around. And here I just took those two greens and blended them out again, pulled a print, then I put copper down, put the embossed plate folder over it, and pulled the print, the image there. And this did dry a little bit before I pulled it up, so half of it did not make it onto the print, but I ended up liking this one a lot more than I thought I would, because where I used it, I was able to get some parts that did not have too much of the copper on it, and I thought it looked really nice, especially when you cut it down with some die cuts. So here is that other technique that I was talking about, where I had cutouts, but I wanted to, stamp something on top of them. But in the other one, I was kind of taping down the piece onto the base, and then I would stamp it and then pull it up. And the problem was when I would try to put it back down, it wasn't always in the same spot. So this was kind of my solution of putting it down. Now the circle I couldn't really put that down again in the same spot, but for the pumpkin shaped one I could. What I'm doing here is, one of my viewers had said or suggested that if I don't get the best embossing the first time while the embossing is still hot, to put some more of that powder on top of it and then heat it again, and it should make a thicker amount of embossing on it. And it did work. I liked how that turned out. So this is the little piece that I used from that gel print I made. I did a little bit of the antique linen on the edges. But yeah, so this little template that I used, I had this other little piece that I just kind of lined it up next to that other little template piece, because when you try to do them all the way at the corner, I don't always get the best impression. I don't know why. So I feel like I get a better impression when it's somewhere kind of in the middle. And so here I am doing that same copper color, and it goes really well with that paint copper color. It's a little more dark, a little darker than the paint color, but the two coppers, they didn't clash. And then here I'm using that same circle technique, where I'm just using that to hold it in the center, and then I can stick it back into that circle if I needed to. I did end up doing a double helping of the embossing on this one as well while the embossing was still hot, and it does make it look like puffy. I like the dimension. I did it also with this little leaf 2 times. So if you've not tried that, it's a pretty cool technique. In the past, what I had done is stamped over it again with the first mark and then did the embossing, but the problem with that is if you don't have it lined up exactly, you might get it off just a little bit. So this way, if you're heating the embossing and then you put the powder right back over it and melt it again, it kind of sticks to that and it's all in the same spot. So yes, to my viewer who suggested it, thank you, and I really appreciate that. That was a really good tip. If you haven't tried it, you might want to give that one a try. So here I'm just going to show you what the book looks like. I do have my video that has me putting it together and has all this little clip, but for those of you that maybe haven't seen that video, or maybe you're not interested in watching that other video, I just wanted to show you here kind of what all these little elements look like all together. There's that little latte with a little apple on it, and I just love these little chipmunks and the raccoons and birds. They were so adorable. I had to get this set. I got it on Amazon, and I'll link that set below, but it came with the stamps and the die cuts, so definitely one of my favorite little sets that I got this year. So hope you enjoyed, and if you try something or you have any tips with these techniques that maybe I could try for another album, please let me know. I'm all ears. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next video. Happy fall and happy crafting.